Hi everyone, thank you for attending today's workshop. My name is Juliana and I will be the moderator for today's session. We also have Marielle who's going to be assisting with technical issues. Before we jump in, there are a few housekeeping items to discuss. If you have any questions for the presenters, make sure that you're using the Q&A feature at the bottom bar of the Zoom application. That kind of helps us to consolidate all the questions into one area so we can get to everyone's questions accordingly. Marielle is going to be helping to monitor our chat as we go along with our session today. And then lastly, this event will be recorded, but attendee information will be kept confidential. The first half of today's webinar will cover a general overview of the DAT itself, and then you'll get a chance to hear from a student panel and their personal experiences with the exam. I'm happy to introduce to you our presenter for today's DAT webinar. Ms. Karen Herndon is a representative of the Princeton Review. So she'll be covering the content of the test, walk through some sample questions, and then share some proven test taking strategies. It gives me great pleasure to welcome Karen.
Hi, thank you so much, Juliana, for the warm welcome. I'm going to share my screen so that we can get started right away. And as Juliana mentioned, we're going to be talking obviously about the DAT. So I'm going to try to get through as much as I can. Can't promise that we'll get through, we'll most likely not get through all of the practice questions. However, I'll be sending everyone who's in attendance today a copy of the slides via email in a follow-up email tomorrow. So even if we don't get through it all, you'll get a copy of the slides to review on in your own time. So today's agenda, we're going to be talking about the actual test, going over the content and format. Hopefully we'll have some time to go over some sample questions and discuss how we can help in your journey. I can just tell you right now how the Princeton Review can help. Everyone here who's in attendance today is eligible for a 20% discount off of our test prep. So if you are looking to use a course, we obviously are a test prep company that's been around for nearly, actually exactly 40 years this year. So we are very well versed in the DAT and we have a lot of great resources for you. So if you're looking to sign up for a course or just have questions about your dental school journey, you're more than welcome to schedule a one-on-one consultation with me. You can do that via my email address. When I send you that email tomorrow, in my signature, there's a link to my Calendly, basically a calendar where you can set up a meeting with me. So we'll get that part of the agenda out of the way right at the top. And let's get into the overview of the DAT. So what is the DAT? DAT stands for the Dental Admissions Test. It's a standardized test that's required for dental school. I'm sure you're all aware of that by this point. It's administered by ADA, the American Dental Association. And it's a test that consists of 280 multiple choice questions, and it's administered on a computer. You'll be taking it at a Prometric testing center, which is basically one of those generic testing centers, and it's not like they administer all types of exams. So it's not like DAT is the only exam that's going to be administered necessarily on the date that you take the official exam. It's possible that even in your exam room, people are taking a different exam altogether. So at these testing centers and on these official test days, just keep that in mind, because knowing that will help you prepare just mentally, knowing that people will be coming in and out of the room because people will be starting at different times. It's basically a completely self-proctored exam. It's probably unlike your SAT or ACT, where there is an official proctor who tells everyone to start at the same time and end at the same time. So obviously there will be proctors there on the day of the test who are monitoring students taking the exam, making sure that they're doing everything ethically, no cheating, things like that. But yeah, that's the word on that, on what you can expect on official test day. Let's get into the dental school. So before we get into the facts about DAT, I just wanted to show you representation of all the dental schools in the US and Canada. So you can see that many of them are concentrated here on the West Coast. A lot of these are private schools. And then there's a big concentration on the entire East Coast. So it's just a good thing to keep in mind. Ultimately, like, what is your goal of school? Where do you want to go? What are their, you know, requirements, first of all, for the schools that you're applying to, and also what is their average accepted DAT score. In general, and we'll get into this later on in the presentation, but in general, you want to score above a 20, but we'll talk about the scoring shortly. So as I mentioned, it's administered year-round by Prometric at the Prometric testing centers all across the US. There are a limited number of test centers and seats, so it's always recommended that you take your test as early as possible, just so that, and also register as early as possible, just so that you can guarantee yourself a seat on the official test day that you want. And also testing early will give you a buffer just in case you need to retake the test in case you're not satisfied with your score. The fee to take the exam is $495. So, you know, this is something that you definitely want to be prepared for, because I'm sure you don't want to have to unnecessarily pay that fee more than once. Hopefully you just take it once, you're satisfied with your score, and you're ready to go and submit the rest of your dental school application. Just know that you have to take, you must wait 90 days if you do retake the test, and the maximum number of times you can take the test is 3 times within a year. And you know, maybe this will become less and less relevant going forward, but as of right now, COVID pandemic is still something that we're, I guess, maybe easing out of, but things are so unpredictable these days. So just make sure that you check the website often to ensure that your test location is open during this time. So here's a breakdown of what is actually on the test, what the schedule of the test administration is going to be like, what to expect on test day. So there are 4 sections of the exam. The first section is going to be Survey of Natural Sciences. Second section is Perceptual Ability. There's an optional 30-minute break, but at that point you've been testing for over and almost 3 hours. So you definitely want to take a break to let your brain recuperate and fuel yourself with lunch maybe, or something nutritious. Drink some water, right? Take a bathroom break so that you can power through the rest of the exam, which would be next would be reading comprehension, followed by quantitative reasoning, and then there's an optional post-test survey. So the whole test day is 5 hours and 15 minutes. So it's a very long day. So that's what you can expect. And then in greater detail, here are, you know, breakdowns of each of the sections. So as I said, the first section is Survey of Natural Sciences. You're going to be tested on Bio, OChem, and Gen Chem. And there, as you can see on the slide, there's a breakdown of the number of questions per topic. And then perceptual ability, this is what makes the DAT a unique test, unlike pretty much any other standardized test out there for graduate school. Perceptual ability, and we'll get into some of those practice problems later, but these are questions that deal with 3D images, understanding, because as a dentist, you're obviously going to be working with patients' teeth, and it's very important for you to understand complex 3D imaging and form development, things like that. So you'll have questions and topics as described here on the screen. So angle discrimination, and these are actual question types. There's a whole set of questions that are just about discriminating between angles, being able to count cubes and it's hard to describe just right now, so it's best that we wait till when we get to those practice problems so I can show you exactly what I mean. But the perceptual ability portion of the test is what makes the DAT very unique. Reading comprehension, I'm sure you are all familiar with this type of section of an exam. You did it for the SAT, presumably, where you have 3 reading passages, you have 50 questions, and essentially it tests your comprehension of what is presented and your ability to analyze scientific passages. Because essentially that's what you're going to be doing as a dentist, or certainly in dental school. You'll be reading a lot, and they want to be able to test your ability to comprehend these complex passages. And lastly, quantitative reasoning, which is basically algebra, calculations, conversions, things like that. So basically math and problem solving, and this will be 40 questions. Each of these sections is scored on a scale of 1 to 30, but you will actually be receiving 6 subscores from 1 to 30. Because just in this first section alone, the Survey of Natural Sciences, the scores are going to break out for bio, OChem, and Gen Chem. And then in addition to those scores, you're going to receive an overall average academic score. So the academic score is the average of your Survey of Natural Sciences, reading comp, and quantitative reasoning. So that's considered your academic score, which you'll get on a scale of 1 to 30. And then your perceptual ability test score will also have its own score of 1 to 30. So you'll get 6 different sub scores, and then an overall score, an average of all sections of the exam. The median point for the distribution of scores is 15, and then the average score is considered to be 18 about. So if those are the median and the averages, what is a good score? You know, the best answer to this, the most accurate answer to what is a good score is, the answer is a good score will be a score that gets you into dental school. You know, I can't tell you exactly what a good score is going to be for you. However, you know, I'm sure that's not particularly satisfying as an answer. So I'll show you this. You know, a good score is one that gets you in. As a general rule of thumb, aiming for a score of 20 or above on each section is going to be recommended, I guess, to get into dental school. But it depends on the dental school that you're applying to, right? But a score of 19 to 20 about is going to be good enough in general to be accepted into a mid-tier dental school. And then speaking of dental schools, these next few slides just kind of give you an idea of what to research when it comes to applying to dental school. And just, you know, it's really important before you start this whole process to think about what schools you want to apply to, first of all, and then do further research, finding out what your timeline is going to be like based on their deadlines, right? So we just included some West Coast schools here in these next few slides. So just remember that the first column is going to be USC, middle column will be Loma Linda, and then third column will be UCLA. Because there's a few slides just breaking down the differences between each school, but it's just interesting to see that, you know, for example, USC and UCLA both start in the fall. Loma Linda starts a little bit earlier in late August. The earliest that you can apply is early June, and the latest that you can apply, as you can see in for the case of Loma Linda, it's an earlier deadline, whereas with USC and UCLA, they're a little bit later, and USC would be the latest. So these are all important deadlines to keep track of. I'd recommend when you do your research and are narrowing down the schools that you want to apply to, recommend that you create an Excel sheet to keep tabs on all the most important deadlines and facts that are important for you in making your decision. So again, this is USC, Loma Linda, and UCLA. It's just interesting to see the breakdown of the number of applicants. I believe this data is from 2019, so it's not totally up to date, but these are, they haven't changed much. This is kind of like their average. it hovers around, total applicants at USC about 2,300, Loma Linda almost 1,400, and then UCLA has the lowest number of applicants, 1,300. And that probably has to do with it being one of the more competitive programs UCLA is, because as you can see, the enrollments are smaller at UCLA. Actually, Loma Linda has the smallest, as you can see on this timetable, but it's just very interesting to see these breakdowns, right? And then this is really important, right? This would be really pertinent for you to research. What are the mean scores for the DAT for each of these schools? So I mentioned that UCLA is most competitive in the previous slide, and that's because, as you can see, their average scores are the highest of these three schools. So, with that in mind, let's say you really want to go to UCLA, it's important to see that their average academic score is almost a 23. That's 3 full points above, a 20, which is kind of what I recommended for a mid-tier school, right? So, and as you get higher and higher in these points, each point counts a lot. So, UCLA has higher averages, but all of these schools have pretty high averages. So you want to shoot for those scores when it comes to taking the DAT. And then the average GPA, once again, you can see UCLA is kind of more competitive, above a 3.7 GPA, whereas USC 3.5 is the average combined grad and undergraduate GPA. And Loma Linda is, kind of right on par. So just wanted to illustrate the importance of doing your research. And I'll try to breeze through these in the next few slides as well. This is just kind of an example of the differences in the requirements for different schools. So this is a sample instruction guide to how to apply to, I think we got this from USC. So this is what they require. But then here's another school's requirements. And we didn't really include the names of the schools here because that's not really the point we're trying to illustrate. What we're trying to illustrate is that every school has different requirements. So it's just really important to do your research so that you're prepared. And again, you can see here, anatomy is recommended for all three schools, but maybe for a different school, it's required. And then biochem is required for Loma Linda and UCLA, but it's only recommended for USC. So important to know that while you're still in undergrad, so that you can get all of those courses if they are required to attend the schools that you're applying to. Okay, so back to the DAT though, when it comes to taking this exam, you have all of these tools on hand, so you'll have a scroll bar, you can mark questions that you want to review or ones that you haven't finished and want to go back to at the end. There's a calculator, but it's only on the quantitative reasoning section, and it's very simple. It's just for simple, quick calculations for accuracy, but it's not like you're going to be asked to do complicated calculus or anything like that for the quant section. And then, of course, there's the review options of reviewing all, reviewing marked, reviewing incomplete. They do have a time expired warning that will pop up and a timer at the top left so that you can keep track of your timing, which will, with any standardized exam, is a challenge, right? They purposely make these exams challenging, having a lot of difficult questions in a relatively short amount of time. So it's important to keep track of time. And that's why it's really important to take as many practice tests as you can before you sit for the actual exam, so you can build your stamina and get a rhythm going when it comes to acing the exam. So for the first section, the natural sciences section is bio, gen chem, and OChem. And it's all multiple choice. The most number of questions is going to be biology. And let's see. Oh, there are 5 answer choices, and there's no guessing penalties on the DAT. You might be familiar with guessing penalties from like the SAT, but there's no guessing penalties. So you should definitely answer every question. And I don't know if any of you are familiar with the MCAT, but with the MCAT, all majority of the questions are based on passages. So there's actually quite a lot of reading to do on the MCAT, but when it comes to the DAT, they're just standalone multiple choice questions. So it would feel more similar to tests that you've taken in school, except for the perceptual ability test. But maybe, I don't know, maybe you've had questions like that. I'm going to try to get to those as soon as I can, because I know we only have about 10 minutes left. But here's a breakdown of the topics covered in bio, a breakdown of the topics covered in Gen Chem. So make sure that you are up to date. You've brushed up on all of these topics before you sit for the exam, of course. OChem, these are all the topics that you need to be familiar with. I'm gonna breeze through these sample questions for the natural sciences because I'm not an instructor myself, so it's not like I could really speak in depth about why the answer is what it is. But like I said, you'll be receiving a copy of these slides. And in fact, if I click to the next slide, here's the answer and the reason why it is correct. I could read that to you, but I don't think it's going to be of much use. I think it's best if you just test yourself on your own. But here are some sample questions on Gen Chem as well. Close your eyes if you don't want to see the answer. And there's the answer and why. And same thing, here's another Gen Chem. And okay, so this is what I wanted to go through together because I think this is what makes the DAT very interesting and unique. So the perceptual ability test is testing basically your visualization skills for 3D objects, 2D objects, and angles. Yeah, I think that's what makes the dental school application, aside from the DAT, interesting as well, is a lot of admissions officers actually look favorably upon students who have had extracurriculars or who have taken classes, at least that are related to using your hands. So like art classes like sculpture or playing the guitar or playing a musical instrument. I mean, I think most graduate schools like seeing, a student who has a diverse background and is interested in those arts and things like that. But particularly with dental school, they look favorably upon those types of activities because you're going to be using your hands a lot, and it has to do with this, visualization and 3D and 2D understanding of things. So obviously pacing is key for this. As you can see in this prior slide, there are 60 minutes to answer 90 questions. So there's basically, you only have 40 seconds per question, less than a minute. So let's just take a look. So there are lots of different types of questions on the PAT section of the DAT, and apertures is one of them. So these questions present you with a 3D object with 5 openings, and then your your job here is to decide which opening the 3D object could pass through if the proper side was inserted first. So for example, number 13, there is the object, and then which one of these A through E is going to be able to pass through it. And actually, I'll ask you all to participate here. If you want to share what you think is the answer in the chat, we'd love to see some, interaction so that I'm not just, lecturing to you this whole time. So yeah, if you have an idea of what the answer to number 13 is, let me know. So if you're still trying to decide what you think the answer is, I'll give you, some tips. In this example, process of elimination is going to be your best friend. So try to look at the differences between the answer choices and compare it to the object Okay, C. And in fact, congratulations, yes, it is C. So you can see that, if you use process of elimination, you'll see that you can eliminate all the answer choices and keep C and E because both of these have a lip on the face of the figure, which matches the lip here on number 13. So you can automatically eliminate A, B, and D. And then from there, you can further use process of elimination, POE, by looking at the angles and seeing how one has a sharp angle. So therefore C is the correct choice. So great work. So it's actually not that bad, right? But it's different. That's the thing about the PAT section of the exam. It's just something that you need to prepare for and practice for, because if you've never seen questions like this before, you might be overwhelmed, you might not know how to answer it. And so it's just a matter of knowing what the types of questions that will be asked and practicing. So those are apertures. Now with view recognition, they're going to present you with two different views of the object, and then your goal is to envision the third view. And they're always going to ask you for one of three views, so top, front, or end. So here they're asking you to choose the correct top view. So yeah, feel free to share what you think the answer is in the chat. And again, remember on the actual DAT, you have about 40 seconds to answer. So keep that in mind in terms of pacing. And again, you can use process of elimination here again. And it's tricky, like even I myself, get confused with this, and I've seen this practice question a lot. In an effort to get through as many of these as possible with our time, I'm just going to show the answer. So the answer is going to be B here. You can eliminate A and D here because of the lower and upper piece. And then C, that circle means that the figure has a hole. And that's the thing about this is, like, you just need to be exposed to these questions to realize what these representations mean. So now that you've seen this, you know that C, that figure means that there's a hole. And so therefore the end should have dotted lines, which it doesn't. So B is the correct answer choice. So yeah, feel free to review this one on your own. That one's kind of tricky. This one is interesting, angle discrimination. Yeah, take a look at this one. So basically you're gonna be asked to rank these in order from smallest to largest, but it's interesting because 2 and 3 look very similar. And I know students have told me in the past that they've actually been able to use a piece of paper and literally just hold it up to the screen and measure. But then I've lately been told that they don't allow that anymore. So this is super tricky. I think this practice problem happens to be a particularly tricky one. But the answer here, I guess there's no slide to show the answer, so I'll let you know. Maybe write it down so that you can look at it later. But the answer here is going to be B. So 4, 1, 3, 2 is smallest to largest. So 2 would be the largest angle, but it's so tricky to see. But I mean, if you look closely, I think you can discriminate that 3, is smaller than 2. 2 does, if you look even closer, it does appear to be wider. So those are angle discriminations. Paper folding, this is another type of question. They present you with a diagram of a flat piece of paper that has been folded, this many times, as you can see on number 16. And then after the last fold, they show you that they've punched holes in the paper. And then your task is to mentally unfold the paper and determine the position of the holes in the original square. So does anyone want to give this a try? If you do, share it in the chat. Yes, it's E. Great work. Yeah, the answer is E. Yeah, just remember to take this in bite-sized pieces. You know, mentally unfold it one step at a time, and then from there you can eliminate. I mean, right away, I'm sure you could have eliminated B, and then probably D as well. And then, you know, you're just mentally unfolding these. So just take it in bite-sized pieces. And then cube counting. Okay, let's see. It's 5:30 right now. Juliana, should I?
Oh, you can pick up the time that what like you can
Okay.
finish the presentation. Yeah.
Okay, how much time do I have? A couple minutes?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, sure. So cube counting, they're going to show you a diagram of several cubes that have been glued together, basically. And then the cubes have been painted on all sides except for the bottom. So I'm going to show you here. So imagine these are all glued together. They're all painted on the outside except for the bottom side. And then your task is to determine how many of the cubes have one side painted, two sides painted, you know, three sides painted, etc. So here in this question, it says in figure A, how many cubes have one of their exposed sides painted? So then you just kind of have to count. You have to visualize and then count how many of these would have one side painted, one of their exposed sides painted. So I've never played the game Minesweeper, but I've heard that this type of question is very similar to how the game Minesweeper works. So if that's a game that you play, or maybe a game that you want to start playing in preparation for the DAT, I'd recommend that. The answer here is going to be B. And basically, yeah, it's two cubes. You're going to have to determine that by counting and realize that if only one side is painted, then four other cubes must be directly adjacent to the side and above. So it's going to be towards the center of the object. So the answer here is B. And then, you know, it's the same thing. They're going to ask how many of the cubes have two of their exposed sides painted. And so you can look at this in your own time. The answer here is going to be B again. Okay, how many other question types are there? Oh, this is the last one. Let's just get through this last one, and then I'll let the panelists take it away. So this is the last type of question. This is called 3D form development. They present you with a flat pattern, and then you know, you have to imagine what it looks like when it's put together. So just look for similar shapes in the template and the answer choices. So you can see here in the unfolded version of this 3D figure that there are tiny squares, right? Small squares. So look at the answer choices with small squares. Okay, well, you can eliminate A right off the bat. And then look at the other patterns in the unfolded shape. Okay, there's some small rectangles. Okay, so then look at the remaining choices, B, C, and D. Which ones have small rectangles? They only exist in B. So therefore, B is the correct answer here. So that one's not too bad. At least I think it's not too bad. I feel like some of the other ones are a little bit trickier. And that's all. So the rest of this presentation, there's just additional practice problems. But again, I will send you a copy of these slides. I think reading comp and quantitative reasoning are types of questions that you're probably very familiar with based on tests that you've taken in the past. So again, I'll send you these slides, but I hope that you gain some insight into the DAT today. And I hope that you have a wonderful rest of your session. Thank you so much for having me. Are there any questions before I go? And if there's no questions, no worries. I'm going to send my email address in the chat right now. But again, you'll be receiving an email from me sometime tomorrow. But if you have an urgent question and you maybe were too shy to ask today, feel free to email me. But other than that, thank you so much for having me. and take care.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Okay, so that kind of wraps up our DAT overview. We're going to be moving on to our student panelists Q&A session. So if you have any questions about the DAT, start sending them in for our panelists to answer. And if you could use the Q&A feature at the bottom bar of your Zoom app. But we have two pre-dental students here with us today, Missy and Chaz. So we're super grateful to have them here to talk about their experiences with the DAT and how they kind of studied for it. And so, yeah, send in your questions. But in the meantime, can I ask the panelists to introduce themselves with their name, either year in undergrad or when you graduated, what you studied, and then your current position and your application timeline. We can start with Missy, maybe.
Okay, hi everybody, my name is Missy. I graduated from undergrad in 2018, so I'm currently about almost 4 years out from that. And I studied neuroscience in undergrad. I applied the cycle, took the DAT last summer, and I will be going to UOP in the fall. So I'm excited for that. Thank you.
All right, my name is Chaz. I'm a senior right now. Been a complicated undergrad. I finished over 120 credits already, but I'm working on getting a BA from Scheidler in entrepreneurship. So what else did you want us to share?
Like your application position.
Oh, I'm gonna be reapplying this year. I applied a little bit late last year, didn't get in, but I'm reapplying this year. So
okay,
yeah.
Great, thank you. So if we could maybe start off with the first, I think probably one of the main questions everyone's wondering, and then we'll go into some of the questions from the Q&A. But do you think you guys could talk about how long you studied for the DAT, and then I guess the prep materials that you used, if you did use any?
So I guess I'll start off. I actually did the Princeton Review class, which personally for me, it wasn't the best study method because I'm a high intensity last minute studier. But I thought it was actually really helpful in terms of like they had like an in-class compendium, which was all these practice problems, a workbook that you could do on your own, as well as kind of like a textbook sort of review book that covered material as well as practice strategies. So to have all of that material was really helpful. It also had like little cutout grids that you could use to physically practice pattern folding, and then like cubes for cube counting, things like that. So I think it was a really comprehensive class. If you're someone who keeps up well with scheduled classes, it would be a really good method, especially if it's helpful to talk to teachers, to have like students to like compete against in a way. So for me, it wasn't the best because I'm a last minute studier, but I think it was still a good study method. I also used DAT Bootcamp, a Kaplan textbook, Khan Academy videos for like specific content questions that I still had. And then I also did I listened to MCAT podcasts while I was like taking walks or something. It's more of a passive sort of form of review. And if I had any questions after the podcast, I just review them on my own later. But I guess, so I basically studied I took the exam on August 19 or so. And I studied starting June until the end of July, like on summer break, sort of. Just kind of it shifted at a more high intensity at the last minute, but I think overall, like having a range of materials was really helpful for me.
I pretty much just used DAT Bootcamp and another resource called DAT Booster. Quick disclaimer about those, you do have to pay for those and they're getting to be a bit expensive, but they do have all the content that you need. DAT Bootcamp has everything from all the content they need to practice. They have 10 practice exams, flashcards for all the topics. For the perceptual part of the test, they have random generators. I got DAT Booster to get additional practice with the perceptual ability, but I also heard the DAT Booster is really good for the biology section. and that's where I was kind of weak. So I used it for like the last couple weeks for some extra help. But yeah, that's all I used.
Okay. I'm sorry, I think, how long did you study for the DT?
Oh, sorry. I studied for about 9 to 10 weeks. But I honestly think 10 to 12 would be like the best if you have that long, but it still worked out.
Mhm. Did you also study in the summer? Because I think Missy was also during the summer.
Yeah, I studied during the summer, probably from either right when school ended or maybe the week after school ended to, I want to say it was late July that I took it, probably late July.
Mhm. Okay. And we did have a question in the Q&A, I guess asking how much the DT affects admission chances. So I guess for back in high school, SAT or applying to colleges, SAT wasn't as much weight as a high school GPA. I don't know if you guys have any personal, this might be kind of a question for admissions staff, but do you guys think that the DT like played a role in your admissions or application process, or did anyone say to you anything about your DT score to you in the process?
I think you guys would be better off answering that.
Yeah. I guess, yeah, I can kind of touch on that a little bit. I think the DT does, I will be honest, I do think it has a good, quite a good weight in admissions, just because it is something that they kind of look at to even out different students' performances, because everyone goes to different universities and everything, and it is a standardized exam, and so it is kind of a way for them to, yeah, compare students no matter like what they might have studied or everything, and it's testing you on courses, I guess, that they think will be beneficial to get into or to study in dental school. So yeah, I don't think, if you don't have a stellar DAT score, it's not going to be the like end of the world, but you do need to be at a certain level usually, like a competitive level will get you a good chance. But even if you're below that, there's different ways that you can be still, accepted and competitive for schools. And sometimes that might be a balance between your GPA and your DT scores. I think there's a little bit of a buffer there, but there are some schools that, if you don't have a certain DT score, they might not even look at your application. That is something to consider, but it's always good. I think like Karen was talking about, looking at the average scores that schools are accepting, because there's going to be a different range, right? Like UCLA, obviously their average DT scores are going to be way higher than some other schools, and so that can kind of have an effect on your chances for each individual school if you compare your DT score to whatever their average acceptances are. Yeah.
I think I kind of agree with you on a lot of that. I viewed the DAT more as like a competency, like check mark sort of thing. So I just kind of told myself, as long as I'm, like around 20, like I will feel that at least I've shown I have at least that. The rest is going to be what I've done in school, what I put in my application in terms of, who I am as a person, what I'm interested in, what motivates me, things like that. So I guess the particular like number that you end up getting shouldn't matter too much, as long as you've shown the basic competency over everything.
Yeah, there's so much more that goes into the application as well. Yeah, so it's not everything, but there's there are certain cutoffs for some schools too.
I think as long as you get, you should like what was it, Karen, like she said, shoot for 20s and everything.
Yeah.
I still think GPA is probably the most important factor, speaking from personal experience.
Mm-hmm.
But like, so what I'm trying to say is don't like, you have to try as hard as you can in school, because a great DAT might not necessarily save your GPA, but an okay DAT will be just fine if you have a really good GPA. So, but
Yeah,
it's probably like the second most important factor of getting in.
Yeah.
I think I've also heard, oh, sorry to interrupt, that just like PAT is a really like good section to stand out on. So that's something you might want to like focus on the score more than, at least for me, that's the stance that I took, is that that's something that you can stand out on that isn't on like other tests and it's not in your GPA or anything else like that. So
Yeah.
that's one that you might want to focus on the score more than in other sections.
Yeah, it is a very unique section to the GT. And so did you guys both study, you studied in the summer, were you guys studying at the same time that you were applying or working on your applications? Or did you take it the summer before you applied?
I did it as I was applying, but I would not recommend that. Should definitely do it the summer before you apply. Like I said, I've kind of been all over the place, so try to be more organized and have a better plan than I've had. But definitely try to take it the year before you apply. It makes things so much easier because the application takes a long time.
Yeah.
If you do it well, anyways.
I agree with that for sure. I definitely was on the later side submitting my applications as well, just because it takes so much time, and studying also takes so much time. So kind of ended up like all studying and then all application. And so definitely want to maybe separate those two and focus on getting your application in as early as possible in the summer that you're applying.
Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, they have dental schools, I think all of them have rolling admissions, which means it can almost be like a first come, first serve. So usually people that apply early have a better chance of getting in. So that's another reason to avoid studying and applying at the same time, because the applications open, I believe, June 1st every year, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, it's best to get that done ASAP.
And so I guess out of the, because I think you guys did use a mix of resources. Out of the resources, are there any that you particularly felt prepared you the most for the DAT?
If I could pick just one, and I think Chaz also really liked this one, but I would pick DAT Bootcamp. I think that one had great like video explanations for things, so you could do like targeted topic review. It had like the PAT generator was super helpful, and it has practice exams. I did pay for it, and it does cost, so if you can share with people, that's a good idea. But yeah, I think that one was really quite comprehensive. And so if I could just pick one, like I would pick that one for sure.
Yeah, same, pretty much for exactly what she said. One thing I would say is if you can pay for it yourself and use it yourself, do it. I'd honestly rather not share mine, because there's things in it that make it like personal. Like you can do, there's like for questions you have a hard time with or that are super easy, you can mark it that way so you know what to review. So honestly, if you can afford to pay for it on your own, I would try not to share it. Because then that way, like if you're sharing it, you have to like, then it's kind of for both of you and things can get kind of complicated. But yeah, definitely. I think for boot camp, it's kind of like a must get. Pretty much everybody that's taking the test is going to be using it. So you're almost at a disadvantage. You're pretty much at a disadvantage if you don't use it. So
yeah,
ideally, you're probably going to be picking that and maybe something else as well.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that use bootcamp as kind of their foundational one, and then everything else was a little bit more supplemental. Yeah.
I think, yeah, exactly. Like if you can pay for it on your own, like Chaz said, like definitely do it, but don't let the cost like deter you from going for it, because I think that one is absolutely worth it. And like, yeah, like Chaz said, like
everything you need to get a 20. Yeah, everything you need to get a 20. If you want higher than a 20, then you maybe have to get something else, unless you're really good at something then. But everything you need to get a 20 will be on boot camp. So
the other like caveat to just studying from one though is that I did have like especially some of the books and things that were printed at a certain time and then the test was updated or something. Even if the books were new, like for example, cube counting, there were some that had like floating cubes, or it's like a cube sticking off the side or something. And the first materials I was using to study didn't include those types of questions. And then when I started using DAT Bootcamp, it was like, oh, this type of question exists. And if I saw them on the exam, the actual DAT, and if I hadn't used multiple study methods, I wouldn't have known. Like luckily it was in DAT Bootcamp, but definitely like try and at least look at other things and make sure you're really covering all your bases.
Mhm. And then are there certain sections that you guys like, I guess if you guys wanted to talk about like your strengths, different strengths in sections you had, or sections that you're weaker at, and then how you kind of balanced the two or tackled ones that you weren't as good at?
Yeah, so I think for me, I prioritized biology and perceptual, because like we've said, PET is like where you can kind of separate yourself. And then biology is just like, you have to just know content. So I focused a lot on those two. I also, my strength in standardized tests is critical reading. So I just kind of reviewed some methods for that, but mainly just was like, I'll just trust myself on this. So I prioritized biology and PAT, and kind of deprioritized math and Gen Chem, just like mainly did practice exams for those. I think those two, those kind of like math, chemistry, orgo are things that you can do practice problems and improve on though. Like you can get a high yield on improving your score if you do practice problems and those. So I would probably spend more time on those if I did it again. But my personal choice was to focus on the content for biology, standing out in PAT, and then just trusting myself for what I'm best at.
Yeah, mine's similar to her. I try to spend most of the time on biology because that's where I'm weak. I haven't taken cell and molecular yet, but that's another reason why I spend more time on it. It's also 40 questions, and it's the majority of your true science. So it's the majority of your true science score, I believe. So yeah, I think biology's will probably be the one that you study for the most. The one I spent the least time on was the reading because I always felt that I had done well in like reading comprehension tests in like high school and all that, kind of like what Missy said. So that and math I didn't spend too much time on, but I try to spend a lot of time on biology because I'm not good at biology. So yeah.
I think the hard part about biology is that you just don't know what types of topics are going to be there, and there's so many that they can pick from. So yeah, I definitely understand that part of it. And then like the math and the Gen Chem and Ergo, it's you can there's only certain types of practice questions that they can pull on you usually. But yeah, biology is just, you could get all genetics on one test, or if you took another one, you could get all like I don't know, anatomy or something. But I guess specifically for the perceptual ability test, especially with Missy, I know you're saying it helped you to kind of stand out. Do you guys have any tips or how the best way to approach that section?
I think I just kind of did like the DAT Bootcamp PAT generator, like every day. Like if I just had downtime, I just go on the app and answer some questions. I guess I just spent as much time as I could on that as possible. I think also like looking at like Princeton Review class had some strategies for doing those, and you can learn about other strategies online or from other resources as well. But I think it helped me to look at the strategies and then figure out, well, how does my brain work too? Like, what am I seeing in this? That, so just kind of coming up with methods that work best for me quickly. So just spending as much time as possible, like practicing that and really being able to do it efficiently was helpful for me.
So what I did for the perceptual is it's just a lot of practice. I mean, it's a skill you got to get better at. So it takes practice, but when you practice it, you need to kind of simulate the test conditions. So when you're answering questions, you want to have your time limit of what you can spend per question answering each one. You don't want to be spending 2 minutes. You can't spend 2 minutes on one question in PAT. I think it's like you have like 40 seconds a question, and then you got to move to the next one. Like that's the pace you got to keep. So you want to simulate that pace when you practice as well, every single time you practice. And the PAT is actually why I got DAT Booster. There's 2 sections of the PAT where I thought the bootcamp generators were horrible. The keyhole one and the top front end section. The generators and booster are a lot better than they are on DAT Bootcamp. So yeah, that's how I prepared for the perceptual ability. So you pretty much, long story short, you need to practice it like how you're going to test. You need to set your conditions like as if it were a test. The time that you spend on each problem has to be like 40 seconds, 40 to 45 seconds per problem. Then you need to move on.
I agree with that. And also you have to be able to do it at like 9, 10 in the morning or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, time limit and also time of day.
Yeah, we don't, we definitely don't get to choose. I think all the DTs are offered in the morning, and at least in Hawaii. But when you guys were studying, do you happen to remember like how many hours you're putting aside each day, or did you take rest, like, rest days, or I guess how many hours a week or how many days a week were you studying?
Oh, they're not gonna like this answer. It was all day, every day.
Mhm.
Yeah, all day, every day. You get Sunday off. That's it. Just so there's a schedule that DAT Bootcamp provides. I would advise sticking to that. There's one portion of the section. You guys probably won't remember this right now, but there's one portion of the section of the schedule that you won't be able to follow because it's like literally impossible to do it. But yeah, it's kind of going to be an all day, every day thing for like 2.5 months at least, 2 to 3 months. You'll get Sunday off, so you got to really enjoy your Sundays. But yeah, it's pretty much an all day thing from when you wake up to when you go to bed. So yeah.
Mine, so I'm a nighttime studier. That's just like 11 p.m. to like 3 a.m. is like prime time. So I basically just decided to be like nocturnal for a week and just do as much studying as I could, and then like switch back to a normal schedule in time to adjust for the, the DAT at 8 a.m. So I think I didn't follow any sort of recommended schedule, but just kind of knowing like what I do best, I just did as much as I could in that kind of like time range, and I think that paid off for me.
And then if you guys have any, like, I know we're kind of running short on time, but if you guys have any last minute tips or like main tips, I guess you'd give someone who's studying for the DAT.
Use your time wisely. Don't try to rush it on 6 weeks and be like, oh, I had a good GPA, I can do this in 6 weeks now. No, you got to take 8 to 12 weeks. That's how long you should spend studying. Any more, then you're probably kind of misusing your time a little bit, because there's probably something coming up after 12 weeks. Under 8 weeks, you're not going to do well. So I think 8 to 12 weeks is your study window, and you're gonna have to stick to it and be disciplined during those 8 to 12 weeks.
I guess I would just say like know your own study methods and your own kind of what works best for you, because you can have like schedules or programs from other sources, but if that's not what's best for you, it's not going to make a huge difference. So just kind of definitely put in the time, definitely put in the work, but don't worry about if you're following like somebody else's guidelines or not. Just really do what's best for you.
And thank you guys so much. I'm so glad we were able to have you guys here. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to the attendees too. But before everyone leaves, I do want to let you guys know that PAC is offering a mock DAT, GRE, MCAT this Saturday. And so if you're kind of just thinking about if any of these tests are what you need to be taking, if you're thinking about it, just take the mock and get an idea of what it's going to be like. And so you can scan the QR code to register for it here. But again, thank you so much to all of our panelists for being here. Don't forget to fill out the evaluation form for this session. You can find it either in the chat, the post-event survey screen that will show up after this event, and in your email. So thank you everyone again for attending, and hope you guys have a great night.